Some northern leaders in the country, as well as civil society organizations, have cautioned President Bola Tinubu against allowing the United States and the French government to relocate their military bases from the Sahel to Nigeria. In the letter, they claim that the U.S. and French governments have allegedly been lobbying Nigeria and other countries in the region to sign new defense pacts, allowing them to redeploy their expelled troops, adding that the presence of foreign military bases in Nigeria would worsen already strained relations between Nigeria and neighboring French countries. Signatories to the letter include Kabiru Chafe, former Minister of State for Petroleum Resources from the Arewa Research and Development Project, Atahiru Jega, former Chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission, Jubrin Ibrahim of the Center for Democracy and Development, and Awal Musa Rafsanjani of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, just to mention a few. Joining us now is Professor Jubrin Ibrahim of the Center for Democracy and Development. He will be telling us why the northern leaders are kicking against allowing the United States and French governments to relocate their military bases from the Sahel to Nigeria. Good morning, Professor Ibrahim. Thank you for joining us. Well, we've been on this defense pact thing since the 1960s, when students protested against the idea of a Nigeria-UK defense pact. Then also National Council of State in the 90s rejecting the idea of the US setting up AFRICOM in the Gulf of Guinea. And now your group, well, your good self and other northern leaders are saying, look, the U.S. should not come anywhere near the Gulf of Guinea to set up a military base, and Nigeria should be careful. Well, what is really the threat beyond the fear that this could affect our relations with our neighbors?
Well, I don't know how we got the epithet northern leaders. I thought the way to describe us is as patriotic Nigerians. We are basically very concerned about the sovereignty of this country. We feel we shouldn't create conditions under which Nigeria will lose some of its sovereignty, and that therefore the idea of a foreign imperialist power having military base where Nigeria has no right of access, where Nigeria cannot ask questions about who is it you are sending here, where, as the agreements they have done with other countries show, they cannot show to Nigeria or the receiving countries the equipment they are bringing into the country, we feel is a profound threat to our sovereignty and independence as a nation. We want to act as our parents did in 1962 when they said no to the Anglo-Nigerian Defense Pact because Nigeria has just gained its sovereignty and we shouldn't be in such a hurry to hand it over to those from whom we took it. Now, 62 years later, we feel even more strongly that no Nigerian should be the player through who this country loses parts of its sovereignty. That's the basis of the letter.
All right, thank you. In the letter, you also mention, amongst many things, the concerns of the proponents, saying that there's an environmental impact challenge that would, and of course, aside from the economic impact of hosting, these trips. Can you expound on that and also share with us the arguments in terms of the fight against jihadist terrorism, how that would impact on Nigeria, and why you would kick against that if that were the case of the benefit to Nigeria?
Well, part of what we found very revealing was when the military junta in Niger revealed the reasons why they had to send the Americans packing. One of it is that Niger was not allowed to see the type of weapons that were being deployed and the type of drones that were being sent out from the base American base in the country. They didn't know whether there were nuclear material inside. They didn't know the composition of those weapons, and they were very much afraid that it could have terrible environmental impact. Secondly, we do know that the location the Americans are seeking is somewhere just by the Niger border in the far north of the country. This is a part of the country that's already devastated by ecological factors, and in particular by the downward march of the Sahara Desert. And we feel sending large groups of people there to be playing with weapons in an ecological zone that's already very fragile is not the best for our country.
Right. So one other thing I'd like to bring up is part of the argument you made was the fact that Pentagon's record says pretty much since they came into the region, there's been increase in violence and all of that. But the proponents of this also argue that is this not just going to help our fight against insecurity? Because the argument we always make is that we don't have proper mapping of terrorists in these areas, and we don't have proper surveillance, which are going to be bringing manpower anyway. And we buy their weapons in the first place. So are you not sure that the weapons we buy, if they want to put mapping equipment in the weapons, we purchased some Super Tucano from America, are you not sure that they could have put those mapping equipment and be able to get intelligence and reconnaissance from us?
I think the key issue as far as the Americans are concerned is that I would agree with you, they have a very high capacity for surveillance and intelligence gathering. They've always had that capacity. But again, to go back to the example the Niger gave, is that the Americans refuse to share the intelligence they are collecting with them, and that these terrorists will be attacking their soldiers, and they will not receive any warning from the American drones that this is a group of terrorists coming towards their soldiers so that they could take measures to defend themselves. And when, therefore, after 12 years, they came to the conclusion that the intelligence gathered is only for American use and not for the host country, then there was absolutely no need to continue to allow that agreement to continue. The challenge this poses for countries like Nigeria, and definitely for our country, is that we must develop our own capacity for intelligence gathering that will be used, that will be directed for our own defense and for our own offense against the terrorists that are destabilizing our country.
Well, Jibo, I get the argument about sovereignty. But we have some kind of partnership with the U.S. in terms of training, in terms of logistics, existing agreement. Is there anything that we can gain if we have the Americans, at the border with Niger? Just looking at it, or it's all dark and no positive side, to this, just under the umbrella of sovereignty.
I'm a strong believer in multilateral processes, and I think the Americans remain an ally of Nigeria. We've bought weapons from them that have been very efficacious in the war against terrorism we are conducting. We have received, as you have pointed out, training from them on the use of some of these equipments they have sold to us. This is all good. This should continue. But where we are drawing the red line is that it shouldn't get to the level of saying we are ceding part of our sovereignty because we expect additional help from them. Don't forget all the weapons we've got from them, we have paid for fully in cash and in advance before they were delivered. The Tucano planes, we had to pay 3 years before delivery. So there isn't anything about they are doing us any favors. It's a commercial relationship. It can be useful for us, and to the extent to which it is useful, we should continue. We are not challenging that in any way, but I feel at the end of the day, the challenge to our sovereignty must be considered a threat, and to the extent to which it is a threat, it must be blocked.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I'm sure you've been able to express the voices of the leaders, the patriotic Nigerians you talk about this morning. Thank you for your time. We will take the conversation further, and I'm sure there'll be more to discuss. Thank you.